We are back in our Kontraakt Stockholm studios in Maria Skolgatan. But right now we are doing a series of talks in collaboration with Konstfack, Magnus Eriksson, and his course Organizing Discourse. So all of these series of programs have been led by the participants of the course, and tonight, not this evening, but it's also we have guests from a different time scape of the world. So that's can you please introduce them?
Yes.
And yourself, shortly.
So I've invited Tommy, that I've known for 12 years. So Tommy is a painter, designer, creative director. He's based out of North Carolina. Danny is an actress, writer, and an artist who's based out of Atlanta. And my connection to them is through I went to art school in Atlanta. And I think I graduated about 8 or 9 years ago. I work now within art, design, and social work, and I'm setting up a platform for discussions like in connection to these different spheres. And I've kept in close contact with the U.S. since I left, and I've realized after like how much Atlanta and the culture there influenced my way of thinking and working, because I think no one here knows anything about Atlanta or the American South. So when I was explaining to someone like what type of city is Atlanta, and I was like, well, it's kind of like a hip-hop country international city. The topic tonight is gonna revolve a lot around hip-hop and what happens to hip-hop when it moves into other spheres outside of its like traditional home in the music industry, or its more traditional creative expressions. Like what happens when it moves into fine arts, for instance, or performance arts, or social innovation. How does it affect like your working methods, or the topics that you're engaged with, or the way that you relate to a community? So I figured I would start with just briefly explaining a little bit like what I have come to find is my own relationship to hip hop. And I can mention first that I don't practice like any of the hip hop elements, and for those who don't know what those are, it's graffiti, it's emceeing or rapping, it's DJing, and breakdancing. I don't do any of those. I don't listen to hip hop more than I listen to other types of music. I don't dress hip hop, but still, it's like when I explain how I think and work, I often come to like hip hop metaphors. So, for instance, I've worked a lot with collectives like participatory art, and one way of explaining how I see like the relationship between me as a leader and the people I work with is kind of like a breakdancer or a rapper, a freestyling rapper who engages with a counterpart. And I like the conflict of this is like you become more imaginative, or you become better and stronger because of like the conflict or the meeting with a counterpart in that sense. And also in terms of disciplinary boundaries, I think within the hip hop culture, it's all connected in a way, and it's seen as like expressions of a very basic human need to express yourself creatively in different ways. And I think this disciplinary boundaries thing, like I enjoy moving between different disciplines. I think the step over to something else is it's not very long, for me. But I've also seen like how hip hop, when you take it out of its regular context in the music industry, how it can become a bridge between like contemporary art and socially marginalized areas where a lot of people feel like the contemporary art sphere doesn't reflect their experiences. So we could start maybe if I invite Tom into the conversation, if you explain a little bit about what it is that you do and what your relationship to hip hop is.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate having a chance to be engaged with this conversation. And like you said, we've known each other for, upwards to 12 years now, and we've been having having this conversation and conversations like this for that length of time, and also living in it when you were in Atlanta. And so I'm not sure exactly where to start on the conversation, so I'll just bridge on to the part of where you were talking about the like hip hop in the South in particularly, and the influence in hip hop in the South. We have a very layered expression with hip hop in the South, because tying into the history, and Danny, I'm definitely going to need a lot of your help to segue on this, because I've been out of Atlanta for the past 5 years,
Okay.
and living here in the mountains in North Carolina. But my complete undergrad experience and then post-undergrad living in Atlanta is full of hip-hop, full of music like Outkast, full of the Dungeon Family, but also it's not limited to those artists, artists that influence music in the South, the Nas's and the Jay-Z's and people like that. I think what the music in the South brought was that that Southern soul, even the slave hymns, that freedom music, and it blended that culture with a sound that was, I heard somebody describe it as biscuits and gravy before, which is comfort food, it's comfort music. So when I'm working in the studio and I'm painting as an artist, it's a few different levels that the music touches me on. Number one, that rhythmic energy that happens in hip hop music across the board. I'm physically dancing most of the time while I'm painting. I paint with my entire body, so I'm physically dancing while I'm painting, and I'm connecting to that rhythm and that old Southern soul rhythm that is in deep in a lot of the music. The last album, the last series of paintings that I was doing, I was going back and forth between, Outkast, CeeLo Green, and Big Crit, and also the Roots, and all of that music. What it has for me, you got this deep pulse and this deep rhythm, but also the lyrical content is so strong, and I can identify with that and adapt to that while I'm creating and expressing myself.
Danny, we'll let you into the conversation. If you want to just tell us a little bit about your practice and how hip hop is an influence, or what relationship you have to hip hop.
Yeah. It's just a thing that you grow up with. I'm an '80s baby, so hip hop has been a defining factor for my life. And growing up in the '80s and stuff, and in the '90s, it's very male centered. Women's voices are present, but marginalized to a certain extent, to a grave extent. And I wanted it just forced me to want to explore our voices. Though I was like, oh, I'm not a rapper. That's not my thing. But I know that we are a part of this culture. We are influential in the things that are happening. We are a part of the stories. We are direct love interests or anti-love interests or whatnot. I'm it with the kind of hip hop video lens, but from a woman's perspective, or from a feminist perspective, and the performance art that I do is rooted in hip hop as well. So I use the music as soundtrack, but I take the content and reimagine it from perspectives of domesticity and motherhood and things of that nature. I just did a piece back in the summer called excuse my French, Motherfucker Never Loved Us, and it was, I went through 3 different street corners playing hip hop music, a kind of mixtape, and looking at the black female body in hip hop and how it's perceived sexually, and looking at strip club culture, which is huge, a huge arena for hip hop music to be tested and played in clubs, and women are part of that being defined. So in going through the 3 different street corners, dancing as a kind of exotic dancer, along with a video performance of black womanhood domesticity, I'm trying to show these contrasts of what does it mean to be a part of this culture in these 2 different kind of ways. So it's taking the music and saying that's not the only narrative. So that's kind of my work.
It's nice. It's nice. Hip hop, like the contemporary art sphere, for instance. Like, how does it change the contemporary art sphere, and how does that change hip hop back, or its traditional expressions?
Or does it ever change it?
Huh?
Or does it ever change it?
Oh yeah.
Is there any?
That's the question.
Well, it's what I've been seeing as far as hip hop, let's specifically, because I'm a visual artist, right?
Yeah.
I've been seeing art go from walls as graffiti, and a lot of those artists are now transitioning from the wall in the neighborhood in the corner to canvas, to be to put on gallery walls, and a different audience is paying attention to it. It's the audience that you will only see at the MoMA or the High Museum in Atlanta, and they're starting to literally open these art allowed to do their work in their neighborhoods, on the walls, and it was seen as something that was a little lesser than art. It was obvious that it was art, but I don't think that the contemporary world really, because it didn't have a place or a definition or box to put it in. Before, now that it has a box to put it in, and I mean, on a practical note, now they found a way to market it and sell it. So now that they found a way to market and sell it, they can package it in a way to their consumer, because it feels raw. It's something that's raw. It's a conversation that their consumers, their buyers, their collectors haven't seen before. And I think when it comes to the artists that are making this work, the ones that I've seen who are staying, they're still continuing the conversation with their style and with their approach. They're getting a lot of, new collectors, new possibilities that are opening for them. But at the same time, I see the temptation for artists to try to curb their styles so that it's more acceptable, and it's more kind of toned down a little bit, so that gallery space or that museum space would accept it, because they can understand some of these visuals. They can understand softer lines and softer colors, So I don't think it's necessarily a horrible thing. I think it helps a lot of other artists expand past, like, this is how we did it on the block. This is how I painted on the walls with this material. So as far as access is concerned, I think it's a great thing. But for me, even when I paint and I'm flipping through these magazines and I'm walking through these galleries, cultural content, right? I'm seeing certain social commentary pieces, and I always have the conversation with myself. Being a young black male, is my work black enough? Like, am I creating work around this conversation that has to do with me as a young black man, at race, being in the South, all of those typical conversations. As far as my personal work, being able to comment on some of the racial and socioeconomic things that black people go through, especially in the South, that's a conversation that happens so much and so often. that I see it and I comment on it, but also there's such a broader picture going on, and so me personally, I'm trying to understand the broader picture past just that arena, so that I can create about it, but I can also understand this world that we're living in, because it's expansive and it's ever expanding, and it's not just what's going on in the South, and it's not just what's going on with race, big factor, but there's some huge big picture going on that I think a lot of artists, including myself, is just trying to understand.
Danny.
Yeah.
I was thinking in relation to this question, because since you're commenting on hip hop culture while using some of the cultural expressions of hip hop, you're bringing new angles into it. Like, what's your experience of, like, how does that, like, you bring hip hop into the contemporary art sphere, for instance? How do you see this? Like, how does it change the contemporary art sphere, and how is it changing hip hop back somehow?
I think when it's going back, when it's going from contemporary to hip hop, it's allowing, or not allowing, it's pushing the abstraction of the music, of the culture, and I think that the alternative modes of that ideal comes into play. There, you start allowing for even more narratives to be played into, not just the more commercialized ones that you see. Now, from hip hop to contemporary, I don't know. I don't know if I'm wholly sure. I know it's a stark, raw ass contradiction to everything else everything else that's in the contemporary world. Just me participating in curated exhibitions. It's really jarring, and it's really hot, and it's just a different lexicon, because I'll blast like some French Montana when I'm doing my performance art, and everything else is like this ethereal kind of sonic nature to their stuff, and stuff that's more fluid. So I just think it's offering a completely different energy to somewhere where it belongs. I think the oscillation between the two is important in valuing the culture in both spaces.
Yes, and we can. Bem, are you there?
Yo.
Hey, babe.
Welcome.
What up?
Hey.
It's good to see you, man. It's been a while.
Cool.
Yes. So yeah, Bem and Danny all know each other. Bem, I don't even know how to introduce him. I'm like, he's the man of 100 titles. I think the first one on your email is Southern Renaissance Man, which I think is very nice. Yes, and then a cultural, creative curator, social innovator, marketing specialist. It goes on, right? It goes on. Actor, traveler.
Wow.
Yep.
You gotta stir some it all up and say art God and just go with that. You have your conversation is explaining to them what you do, and then and they're confused all over again, man.
Art God. I've narrowed it down. I think I'll just do.
And Bem, I'll just fill you in a little bit. We've been talking about how hip hop has influenced the practices of Tommy and Danny, and how they see the connection between the contemporary art sphere and hip hop. So if you start by just letting everyone know, we're going to broadcast this on YouTube later, what you do and what your relationship to hip hop is.
My name is Bem. I am a creative culture curator as well as community outreach liaison at the Center for Civic Innovation in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a child of hip hop. I'll be 37 in December, and from my parents, Motown and Fela on my dad's side, and then I think when you're like 3 and you get a crayon and you draw on the wall, and then they spank your hand because you shouldn't have drawn on the wall. When I saw like Crush Groove or one of those old hip hop, I saw graffiti. Before I understood the music, I saw older people in the movie, what it looked like to me. They were older than me, drawing on walls, and no one was spanking them. A natural act of rebellion that I saw, and I was just attracted to these people that seemed to be using a lot of colors and looking like they were being rebellious. This was before I understood the music and tagging trains and Crush Groove and those type of movies.
And I wanted to ask you, because like you mentioned, you work for the Center for Civic Innovation, and I know that you've been part of initiating this like collaboration between the A3C, the Hip Hop Festival in Atlanta, and the Center for Civic Innovation, in finding like initiatives that connect hip hop to social change and like civic engagement. And I wanted to ask, like, what do you think that hip hop and urban creative culture can bring to social innovation?
First and foremost, I'm like an attitude adjustment almost. Hip hop, voice of a disenfranchised people when it was started. Which anytime you create something like that, it could be considered an act of rebellion. And fighting for some sort of social change or a time to, if there was go against the rule, that's like probably one of the first steps of innovation is to think differently.
I'm gonna chime in for a second because I have to go and deliver. I have to go and deliver some artwork, but I'm just gonna do my exit on. Bem is talking about as far as social innovation, right? The simple thing is this: the way I see it, you have those disenfranchised kids, those young black men and women, and when they see their peers and people on TV that looks like them who are actually excelling in life, whether that's the image, just the image of it, or actually making business and cultural, what it does is they see possibility. And so when they see possibility, they're not stuck in the bubble, the mental bubble that's what's around them. And for the sake of that alone, it's a very powerful tool culturally. Because if these kids don't have an option, and if they're stuck in that bubble, then that's where people implode. That's where they explode. That's where they implode out of frustration and not having any hope. So for them to see somebody that looks like them, dressed, talks, walks like them, who are actually excelling in life on the TV in front of them, it gives them something to reach for, something to push for. And a person who's an artist, who's a purist as an artist, they'll say, hey, you know what? This culture, like any other culture, like any other music, has its sweet and its sour. So we can have our uplifting music that's about taking away the drugs and guns and excelling, and also have that strip club music sometimes on the shelf next to each other, because regardless of if you want to admit it or not, that is the full gamut of the culture. So it's like if you're going to edit this part, you're going to have to edit the other part. But if you're going to bring it to the table honestly, then you have to look at that entire platter of what our culture consists of. So with that being said, thank you for letting me onto the show. I really appreciate it so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Nice to meet you, man.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, Tommy, yo.
Edo.
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 Danny, I was curious because I know that Bem has mentioned that you're concerned about like community development or community engagement through interdisciplinary arts as well. So I was curious, like, what potential do you see for hip hop or like your own, like the way that you have incorporated this in your own practice? Like, what possibilities do you see for like social improvement, if you want to call it this, or
Oh, I mean, I think art and, just for myself, telling stories, telling unheard narratives is all a part of that practice. It's all a part of that social engagement. It's all a part of that, social improvement. It allows people to talk about things that they necessarily don't get to talk about in certain kind of settings. Hip hop in for me, my work participates in the community. It wants to be engaged. I don't know if I necessarily always want to have a conversation with my work. I'm putting ideas out there. I'm throwing out things that you might not have thought about. And so anytime you do that, anytime you, I feel like anytime you're attacking or putting ideals in a place where they aren't largely witnessed, that you're allowing for some sense of revolution to happen. And it might be the most minute thing, but I'm always for any sense of change, in increments or large leaps. And that's kind of what I want to do. What my work does. It's like, here, look at this thing, look at this story. And that's kind of what hip hop is too. Here, look at what is happening to me. Look at how I feel. Look at my environment. Look at what look at what I eat. Look at how I feel. Look at how when I'm at the strip club. Look at how I feel when I'm riding down the street, when I'm smoking weed or whatever. All that kind of stuff is just like, accept it, and this is my honest narrative, and so you have to deal with it now. Anytime you put something out there, you're forcing people to deal with it, and I think that's what hip hop is. Hips through.
nice. Bem, you're still with us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. I'll ask you the last question. When you see, let's see, how do you see the future of hip hop, like the movement that's happening now, when hip hop is moving into other spheres, appropriating these spheres, being appropriated, like how do you see the future of hip hop outside of the commercial music industry? Is it going to stay, turn into something else? What is this?
Because hip hop is so readily accessible, and I think when we were younger, you had to be a seeker of hip hop, and then you went out and found it. But now, because it's such a part of popular culture, you can stand still, and it will find you, which I think that affects ideology. I think the attitude of hip hop will affect, because it's so readily available and it's all around us now. I think future politicians and public officials will kind of, whether they want to or know it or not, will kind of take on that attitude.
They already have.
But more but in a good way. There'll be more of the people, more understanding. There'll just be more of the people and kind of more understanding. If anything, they'll be less uptight. Like you'll have, oh, I can't do this and I can't do this. Because if there's anything, hip hop also gives you permission to be a rebel and do the right thing and not follow the crowd. And so I think public officials will take on that attitude.
Awesome. Thank you, Bem. I think unless Danny, is there anything you want to say before we finish this? Any last remarks?
I'll jump on with Bem. The fact that Obama said everybody want to pop off, then you send me or whatever. I don't know the direct quote, but pop off is a big deal now. You know what I mean? It's like the president of the United States is using this terminology that is reflective of a culture that comes from people who were down here and now are visually up here and influencing everybody everywhere. I mean, what more can you say? You know what I mean? It's gonna keep permeating all kinds of different spheres. It's gonna take on new forms, new shapes. And it's an exciting thing. And the languages is gonna, reach even more people and become, it's already doing that. The Quan is ubiquitous. What else? Dabbing is ubiquitous. Like that kind of dab on them folks. You know what I mean? Like this is the impact of what people who have been subjected to this, such hardship, such degradation, and yet are still powerful enough to spring forth something amazing. You know what I mean? Like it's just going to keep spreading, and it's going to take on all kinds of new forms, alien forms, futuristic forms, traditional forms, fundamental, ritualistic stuff that we have no clue. I'm excited for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Danny. Do you have any?
Thank you, guys.
Do you have any more on this, Cenk?
No, I also want to thank you. It was so exciting for me. I'm not that familiar with the whole hip hop thing, but it's quite exciting. How it can be also exciting for me. To think this kind of stuff in. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Holla at y'all. Edo. Hi, Danny.
Hi, Bem.
Hey, Danny.
Yeah.
Hi, yo.